Hello everybody, Fremantle here, with 9 mistakes that in my experience most Americans make about liberalism. In a way, they're surprising. Liberalism has been the American political consensus for decades. Nothing about it should surprise us, and yet Americans have made some very serious mistakes about it. It doesn't follow they'd be any less fond of liberalism if they understood they're mistaken, but they are. Most Americans think the welfare state works like this. Each of us lives the traditional American way. This is a free country. Each of us follows a star of his individual choosing. Knocked down by a serious problem in life, he's helped back to his feet by the welfare state, he resumes his life. In short, Americans think the welfare state is an addition to traditional American life. That is not the way liberalism works. It replaces traditional American life with quite a different way of living. 9 points. Number 1, the liberal center of value is not the individual and his life. Here's a suggestive example. Better together, he sometimes says, and stops. I say the value of being together with other people depends entirely on the individuals involved, who you are and what you're doing, and who they are and what they're doing. But the liberal says better together and stops there, because in saying that, he's said the main idea. What counts most for him in social relations generally, not talking about friends or family, but social relations in general, is what I call bare being together with other people, not a matter of who they are as individuals. 2, the liberal center of value is society, and his political focus is primarily on institutions. For example, he writes health care law to require end-of-life counseling for old people, the heaviest weight on the institution of government-run health care. 3, whether the liberals' program actually improves the situation of needy people is always secondary for him. He believes it's far more important that he intends to help. If his program has bad unforeseen consequences, he wants to be judged not on those results, but on the way he intended things to work out, his feelings, his picture in the head. 4, he's not empathetic toward his favored people because he thinks they are not being treated according to their merit, but because he believes they are oppressed. His word for people being systemically denied their fair share. If the system denies people what the liberal calls their fair share, then they are oppressed, and his heart goes out to them. 5, the help people are to get is to be determined by the political process, not by the particular needy people or their advocates. Imagine a social policy to reduce obesity in Americans. So-called social policies are an offshoot, a product of the political process, right? Do obese Americans want their obesity reduced? Do they want that to be determined for them by politics, by social policy? Maybe not. But that wouldn't stop the liberal from giving it to them. 6, the liberal political process does not simply react to citizens' demands. Liberal officials don't just sit around in the office drinking coffee until a constituent comes in with a complaint. Liberal officials believe it's their job to run society. They are constantly on the lookout for things they believe could be improved and laws that can be enacted to improve them. And you can't run society without running the people who make it up. 7, liberal officials don't necessarily give up their programs because people suffer from them. They believe that the alternative, non-activist government, would be far worse for people. They may change one liberal program for another. They may also hold out and change nothing. 8, liberal officials to whom Americans turned over responsibility for meeting their needs turned out just as irresponsible as they are. Example, welfare programs and hikes in so-called entitlements, outstripping funding and creating massive so-called unfunded liabilities. And 9, Welfare state solutions usually do not leave everything else intact. The belief that they do, which most people seem to hold, is naive. It radically underestimates the branching, overlapping, and interacting effects of people living in a complex society. By the way, the liberal criticizes monopoly, but in principle he has no objection to it at all, since he proposes to create the biggest, most perfect of all possible monopolies and put the government in charge of the entire economy. He also doesn't object to the principle of forcibly taking people's property away from them. That's the MO of the welfare state. Why did liberalism have to work out the way it did? Why couldn't the welfare state have been only what Americans wanted and thought they were getting? A helping hand when things go wrong, otherwise staying out of their lives. Did it have to become the kindly thug, managing their lives for their own good? Click it or ticket, as the state government says in California. You wear a seatbelt when you drive or you get a traffic ticket. Banning cigarette advertising. Campaigning against obesity. Instructing you on how to clean your toilet under penalty of federal law if you don't follow the instructions. Look at the label on a bottle of toilet cleaner. Well, one way it had to happen would be a liberal who is perfectly, ideally serious in his liberalism, who leaves no opportunity untaken to help people, who looks out at the world caring about people, and thinks like this. For each ability the human race has, some individuals are bound to lack it or be deficient in it. If you take all those human deficiencies together, they describe a complete human being, and one who is completely deficient, completely helpless. Our mission as liberals is to help people who are deficient. Taking them all together, all those deficiencies together, well, we have the idea of a person we want to help who is utterly incompetent. He needs someone to see to every part of his life. That's what society, what the political system needs to do. Someone who had that concept of a person and who was determined to help them would very likely become a kindly thug. The takeaway points from today's video. Many people are wrong in what they think about what liberalism values, what the liberal intends, and what the liberal government does. Liberalism is often different from what people think it is. Thank you for listening.